To the average man, women might often seem like they come from a different planet. In fact, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of where men say women are too hard to figure out. But the truth of the matter is that as complicated as they might seem, they're simply humans, and they're driven by the same primal urges as everyone else on the planet. But while there are hundreds of videos online telling you how to turn a woman on, no one tells you what women do when they're already turned on. No, this isn't the normal thing you might be thinking, but a few subliminal things that often happen, and men simply don't realize this about a woman. So without wasting any of your time, let's dive into some of the key things that you might not have noticed a turned-on woman does, but will never tell you.
Fearless Forge.
Number 1. Self-satisfaction. The first one is perhaps the easiest to understand, and it's the same as men. You see, when a woman's turned on and she doesn't have a partner, she'll automatically turn toward the same thing that's biologically programmed in her. Yes, this means that she'll more than likely do exactly what you've expected. However, adding to this is the fact that she might even engage in watching some unsafe for work content to help stimulate her mind and fantasies as well. Now, the kicker here is that very few women would be willing to tell you about such things, which creates the illusion that women don't do this. Well, you can be sure that women engage in self-satisfaction just as much as men do, and it's something that they keep to themselves. Number 2. Taking sexy photos of themselves. Yes, you might think that simply because she doesn't send you all those images, she doesn't take them. Well, this is a massive misconception, and in most cases, she'll take these photos of herself and simply save them for later. Occasionally, she might send them to someone, but women also want to see how they look. However, this only happens when they're turned on, and when she's not turned on, it couldn't create enough motivation for her to do this. While no one encourages men to do this, it's worth noting that if you find a couple of her secret folders on her phone, you might be pleasantly surprised by what you find. Number 3. She does the texting thing. Another way women often get rid of this feeling and protect themselves is by turning to text methods of satisfaction instead of the real thing. You see, whenever she sleeps with someone, it has a deeper emotional connection that might create some turmoil or trouble down the line if both aren't interested in a relationship. Doing this through texting is a way for her to feel some of that connection, which might even lead to some connection. In fact, when creating these intense situations via texting, it's much easier to create a bond than it would be when you're simply watching some bad content on the internet. So if a woman's flirting with you via text messaging and you notice that the conversation is moving to some role play, you'll know exactly what she's desiring. You can capitalize on this, and since it's via texting, the repercussions aren't that high. However, very few women would ever admit they engage in such activities when they're turned on. Number 4. Using toys. Yes, one thing you might also not expect from a woman is the fact that many of them choose to use toys whenever they feel the need. You see, there are only so many things that you can do with your bare hands before it's time to ramp up the intensity and have a little more fun. Many women would even hide these toys as a way of avoiding attention, but if you search carefully, you might come across a couple of things that you might have never thought a woman would have. It's all about having some fun when they're alone and have some privacy. Now, toys can be extremely beneficial, and should your relationship reach the point of physical interactions, these toys can become extremely handy, and you could even use them during your intimate moments. This is something very few women will tell their partners, and it's often a discovery made by accident, which causes some confusion and questions in the relationship. Number 5. Fantasizing. One of the most prominent things you notice when it comes to women who are turned on is the fact that they will all engage in some kind of fantasy. You see, women are far better at activating the right hemisphere of the brain, which is notoriously connected to things like imagination. You see, for a woman to reach a level of stimulation, she'll fantasize about things that she desires, and this can often happen whenever she likes to. In fact, many women in relationships might fantasize about someone else without telling their partners as a way of getting off. But delving into the fantasy world is one of the things you'll automatically start to notice when it comes to women. If she truly likes you and you're too oblivious to make the move, you might find that she actually uses you as the subject matter for some of her fantasies. This can be quite a compliment, but the bad thing is that you'll never even know. However, some women might become a little more flirty with you, and this can also be be a big indicator of attraction, which might even mean that you've become the subject matter in some of her deepest fantasies. Number 6. Seducing the person she likes. Another more prominent one that you'll mostly experience in a relationship is that a woman who's turned on will seduce the person she likes, and she'll push for some kind of sexual intimacy to actually happen. In fact, a woman might even become more pushy than a man, and in some cases, she'll take seduction to a completely new and somewhat interesting level. Many men have noted that even though a woman might seem like a sweetheart in how she portrays herself in public, behind closed doors, this becomes a completely different thing. You might even notice that she'll treat you with some sensual massages and even a romantic evening, but this is mostly driven by her hormonal desires. Number 7. She'll reference the act often. Another thing a turned-on woman will frequently do is to talk about the subject often. You see, in casual conversation, women might avoid this topic, and this is due to not giving men the wrong impression, but if she's a little turned on by you, she'll be the one bringing it up. Now, keep in mind that the woman won't be as direct about this as men, and in most cases, she'll rely on the skill of implying her desires. She does this in the hopes of you catching on, and from here, she will want to engage in this beautiful activity. The problem is that many men are so used to being the hunters, they often don't catch on when women give them these signals, which could lead to some confusion, and this might harm the final mood. It's important that you become more aware of her behavior as a way of spotting this. Number 8. Reading fantasy stories. Another way women get off is by engaging in one of their senses, visually reading something, and creating a fantasy for it in their minds. You see, many women will find their satisfaction in reading rather than actually watching some of those unsafe sites on the internet. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to be an enticing or erotic book, but it could even just be a normal story, which allows her to create some mental insert of herself in the story with the protagonist or one of the characters. Nowadays, the visual component has become far more available, but reading these kinds of books is still something many women choose. You might even find that she reads a lot when she's alone, and this could all be to create that sense of stimulation that turns her on. However, many women will be open about this, since it doesn't actually have such reputational effects as watching videos on bad websites. Number 9. Admiring their own bodies. Much like taking those naughty snapshots, many women who are alone and turned on might even go to the mirror and strip down. It's here where they have the opportunity to admire their own bodies and often even engage in some other behavior as well. You see, men often think that women don't do this and they need someone else around, or at least someone else in their minds, to create this sense of arousal. However, the female body is naturally just a thing of beauty, and it's for this reason that her own body can turn her on. Once again, these things usually happen behind closed doors when nobody notices. This self-seduction technique is one of the most powerful and often a closely guarded secret among many women. Number 10. She may or may not consider talking about this to her friends. Depending on how open a woman is, some might even consider talking about these feelings to some of her girlfriends. This will allow both of them to bond over this, and in some cases, that illicit fantasy you've been holding on to might even become true. The female mind can be very fascinating, and many men don't understand this. You see, it's expected that women are these protected princesses, but in reality, they're just human. By treating them with the same respect you treat other people, you'll get to know some of these things, but the catch is how you get to know them. Make sure to check out this next video on how a woman will react when she finds you attractive.